Hello everyone, my name is Caleb Holenshaw. I am the Director of Education for Fayetteville Public Television, and this is part 3 of our series for behind the scenes Portal video. We had the production, which was the filming behind the scenes, then we had the editing portion, now we have the VFX, and then the last one will be done by Dan Robinson, who composed the score. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. So here I actually have the portal that we used. I used a couple different variations of this thing for the actual video. So let's go ahead and recreate it. So over here in my media pool in my project panel, I will do a new composition. I'm gonna just leave it the standard settings, which is 1920 by 1080, which is 1920 by 1080 and 24 frames a second, which is good. The duration can be anything that you want it to be. I left mine at 15 seconds and 22 frames. So just about 16 seconds. Let's click OK on that. The first thing that we're going to do is go ahead and click New, and we're going to make a new solid. This can be any color that you want it, and I'm actually going to make this one probably 800 pixels by 800 pixels, so it's just going to be a box basically, and we're going to use this as our mask layers. The second thing we're going to do is up here, if you don't see the ellipse tool, if you hold down and then go over to the ellipse and then double click on that, it'll make an ellipse directly in the center of whatever object it is that you have selected. I'm going to make another solid, and this one will actually be my first of my sparks, so I'm going to call this Spark 1, and I'll just make this the regular size of my frame this time, so 1920 by 1080, and so now we have another solid that is just as big as my composition frame. Now let's go to Effect, and we're going to go to Simulation. This is where we actually start to get into some of the spark kind of business, and we're going to do Particle Systems number 2. And as you see right here, it now gives us a kind of simulation of some sparks that are exploding outwards. So now let's tool down the producer, and here we have position. And now if we go down to our bottom layer, so this is the layer that doesn't have any sparks on it, it's just the mask layer. I'm going to select the mask path, and then I'm going to do Command C or Control C. You can also do that by going up here to Edit and then Copy, and then come back up here to my Spark 1 and click on the keyframe button here, and then do Control V, or you can also do Edit and then Paste here. So I'm going to do that, and now it has actually parented the position of my particle systems directly to where my mask was, where my circular ellipsoidal mask was. And you can see that pretty easily. If I click U right here, it's actually made me 5 little keyframes here, which I can click and drag around if I want to, which this will obviously make it go faster or slower over time depending on what I'm looking for. So let's highlight these and actually bring it down to here so that it automatically starts off. So it just goes around once. We're going to fix that in just a second, but before we do that, I think we can go ahead and just delete this dark gray solid. I don't think we really need that layer anymore. And then holding down the Alt key on your keyboard, hold that down and then click the keyframe button. We're going to type in loop out, which I love After Effects' new kind of suggestion system they have here. So loop out, and we're just going to leave it blank, and that means it will just go ahead and loop over and over and over indefinitely until we tell it otherwise not to. So this is already a pretty good start. You might already be seeing where this is going. We need to change a couple things about this though. For one thing, the longevity of it, the sparks are staying way too long. So maybe let's try 0.5 to start off with, and that looks a bit better. There we go. It's a little bit too fast too. I think I might slow it down just a bit. There we go. That looks pretty good. And then we just need to mess around with some of the physics settings. So here we need to make sure this is set to explosive, which it should be by default. We can change the velocity of the sparks to kind of make them funnel in together a little bit more. So there's that. That looks pretty good actually. We're going to change the gravity to 0, so that way there is no gravity affecting these sparks. They just kind of stay put. And that looks pretty good. Let's change the birth rate. So this is how many sparks are actually generated by that single point. Let's change this to like maybe 0.7 or something like that, because I think that was way overkill what we were getting earlier. Maybe 1.2. Maybe that'll look pretty decent. Okay, cool. So with that said, we have a really big portion of it already done. Let's go ahead and Control D this entire layer to duplicate it, and I'm going to duplicate it about 4 times. And then all we're going to do is change the position of it. And that is it. So let's go ahead and just drag this one back, drag this one back, and drag this one back. And now we can see what that looks like. So now we have, looks like one of them's overlapping a bit. Yeah, it's this 4th one. So let's change them up just a bit to make sure they are nice and spread out. Yeah, that looks pretty good right there. So they're all kind of fall in the same circle. And one good thing that you can do is just kind of randomize these up a little bit, because right now obviously it looks very, it just looks too like planned out essentially. So one thing you can do is change the random seed of each of these. So I'm just coming over here and just clicking and dragging. And basically this just changes the way that it's randomized. So it looks a little bit more scattered, a little bit more random. So that looks better by a little bit. And you can also just adjust these kind of numbers just a hair. So I'm going to reduce the birth rate of that one, maybe increase the birth rate of this one, change the longevity of this one. Let's change the longevity of this one to be like 0.8 or something, a little bit more. So there we go. So now we're looking a little bit better in terms of that. Let's do 0.6 on this one. And then you can also change the velocity of these as well. So I'm going to change the velocity just a bit to just give it some randomness and give it some life in there. So that looks a little bit better, and it'll come together even more as we go along into the process. So with that done, I'm going to save this project so I don't lose anything, and I'm going to highlight all these and right click and do pre-compose. So these will be my spark layers. So spark layers, and there we go. And then now we have a new pre-composition. I'm gonna actually double click into this because I do need one of these layers. So I'm just gonna double click and click Control C on my keyboard and then paste it in here using Control V. So now what we have, if I turn this layer off, is just one of these kind of running itself around in a circle, which is perfect. That's exactly what we want. So now let's go ahead and change the longevity of this up. This next layer is going to actually be kind of our the core of our portal, if you will, because we have, if we go back here just a second, we have kind of these sparks that are going off of it, but we need like a nice core, something to anchor the entire thing down. So with that being said, we can change up some of these. Let's see, producer. And I think let's give this a little bit of gravity. Not a whole lot. Whoops, that was probably too much. So 0.5 maybe, that might work. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Let's change the velocity. Let's bring the velocity way down and change the gravity to maybe like 0.2 or something like that. Yeah, that's not too bad. The longevity is still a little bit much, I think, so let's do like 0.8 and see what that gets us. That looks pretty good. I'm going to duplicate this. Whoops. I accidentally duplicated our particle systems. I'm going to duplicate this and just change the timing of it so that we always have something happening here. So now we have these two guys kind of chasing each other around. And then I'm going to duplicate this one more time. I'm going to move it to the top. And this is going to be our actual core. So with our top one selected, let's just go ahead and give it 0 gravity, so it's not affected by gravity at all. Let's give it a lot of velocity. Maybe negative, yeah, something like this, I think. Would be pretty good. Just something, and then longevity, let's turn that way up so we're not. There we go. Cool, that looks good. And then when we combine what we have there with our current sparks, you can see that it is starting to come together a little bit. All right, looks pretty good. I think I am going to go and turn the velocity of some of these down just a little bit. So let's turn that down to like 0.2 or something. So that looks pretty good. So now we have, again, we're just trying to randomize it up a little bit, and that is what we have now. So with that said, we are pretty good to go on our portal here. We are missing a couple things though, and I'm not going to do it all the way because it would take a little bit of time to properly compose this up the way I wanted it to. I'm going to go ahead and make another solid. I know it's kind of weird we keep making solids over and over again, but just keep making make another solid here. And then we're going to go to effects, and some of you might to simulation, and some of you might have seen this one last time, but Particle World is a really great kind of plug-in we have here as well. And basically with this, for the actual portal, you might notice that I have a couple of these kind of spraying off, and they're hitting the ground actually and bouncing up. And that's actually a pretty easy thing to do if we come back to this one. So this one obviously is a little bit much right now in terms of just how many sparks it's putting off, but it's pretty easy to change up. So let's just go here. First thing we need to do is turn the birth rate way down, so like 0.1. It really should be pretty subtle here. So that already is adding a little bit. Let's maybe, yeah, so that's already adding some good stuff right there without us even really changing it. If we wanted to keep going with this, we can really turn these up to 11 by going to the physics. And then down here we have a little tool that we can actually change the floor position with. Change the floor position, but also how the sparks are interacting with the floor. We have direction axis, but let's go to floor action and click bounce here. So now they're actually going to hit this floor and bounce off. So if we solo this layer right here, this is what is happening. And then yes, we can change the position of the floor. Actually, let's go ahead and change that. Oops, not longevity, producer, and then floor, and then change this one to bounce as well. So now they're all bouncing, and then we can change the floor random bounce and all that kind of stuff, but the floor position we can change as well. And you can see how they are live updating right there for me. So now we have, yeah, so some kind of interesting looking just particles kind of bouncing off this guy. So that looks good. We can also change the kind of simulation that this program is doing for us right now. That's underneath physics. And then change this from explosive to directional axis, and you can now see that they are spraying off to one side or another. Let's toggle up the floor here and then go to direction axis. So now we can actually change where this direction would be spraying. And you can see me doing that right there. And then of course you can change the velocity with which that is happening. Let's change the floor, so we need to change the floor position here just to kind of match it up with everything else to where they're bouncing off at the correct spot. Let's do something like that. That looks pretty good. And I'd imagine it might be a little bit much. Yeah, so it's a little bit much. So let's turn the birth rate down to even lower if we can. Whoops, that was not lower, 0.025. Sometimes you have to really be picky with these kind of things as to what you want. So there we go, that looks pretty good. And then of course you can change the gravity effects and everything like that with it, just to kind of change the velocity with which the sparks are popping off there. The last thing I think we'll do is we need to just add a nice glow to this whole thing, because it does look pretty solid right now, but one thing that really sells it when you are compositing it into live footage is it does glow and it does bloom. And you know, if you think about it, if something was that bright, if this portal was there in real life, it would be kind of glowing and really kind of blowing out the camera, no matter what camera it was. So let's go ahead and make a new composition here and select our spark layers here. Just find our sparks layers here and then come over here to the effects presets. I'm just going to type in glow really quick and pop a glow onto that. You can see that's already doing some cool stuff for us. And then of course we can just change what it's looking like with glow radius. Okay. And then in your editor, whenever you bring this into your editing system, whether it's Premiere Pro or DaVinci Resolve, you can also glow this up even more. I mean, I could honestly glow this up a lot in After Effects, but I like to kind of keep it right here to where you have a lot of information to work with when you bring it back into your editor, so you're not locked into one thing. And I don't have to constantly be going from After Effects back to DaVinci, from After Effects back to DaVinci. So with that said, thank y'all for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Keep a lookout for the next part. That'll be part 4 of our behind the scenes series with our portal tricks video. Hope this was very informational for you, and we look forward to seeing you in the next one.